People told me you and Young Boy was beefing or something like that.
I know
You
they
said
be
something
saying
about
that a lot.
what happened, Von? What's going on with you, man?
They be saying that a lot. It's like we got the same interests in hoes, and then you know how the internet will try to make it.
Don't tell me I got problems over girls.
No, it's the internet, gang.
To understand King Von's story, you got to start where he came from. O Block, one of the most infamous neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago. Growing up in Parkway Gardens wasn't just rough, it was survival of the fittest. This wasn't a place where you just played ball and went home. The block had a reputation tied to the Black Disciples, one of Chicago's most feared gangs, and Von was right in the middle of it. Born Davon Bennett, Von grew up surrounded by violence, drugs, and the constant sound of gunshots. His father was in and out of jail, and by the time Von was just 11, his dad was killed. That left him leaning even harder on the streets and the O-Block crew for guidance. Von wasn't some kid watching from the sidelines either. By his teens, he was already making a name for himself in the streets, catching cases and gaining a reputation that followed him long before he touched a recording studio. It wasn't just talk. Von's name was linked to serious bodies in Chicago. The streets whispered that he was involved in the murder of Jakira K.I. Barnes, a young female shooter who was known as a rival assassin. Von even taunted her on Twitter before she was killed, which made those rumors stick even harder. His name also came up in the killings of Madell McCambry and Lil Mark, both tied to rival sets. Whether he was directly involved or not, the streets believed he was. And in Chicago, your reputation is as powerful as facts. That's why Von carried a certain fear around him even before rap money came into play. But it wasn't just bodies. Von also caught a major case in 2014 for the murder of Malcolm Stuckey and the attempted murder of 2 others. He sat in jail fighting for his life, but he ended up beating the case after witnesses refused to testify. Beating a murder charge in Chicago ain't normal, and when Von walked out, it only added to his myth. People started calling him a real-life demon, somebody you didn't want to test. That reputation made him dangerous, but it also gave him credibility when he decided to rap. By the time Von linked with Lil Durk, his career took a sharp turn. Durk wasn't just another rapper. He was already buzzing heavy and had the resources to put Von in position. Signing with Durk's Only the Family, OTF label, gave Von a platform, and for the first time, the world outside of Chicago started paying attention. His storytelling stood out because it wasn't fiction. Von was rapping about situations he really lived. Songs like Crazy Story blew up because fans believed every word. And in drill music, authenticity is everything. But even as his rap career took off, Von never left O-Block behind. He'd go from recording in the studio to posting on the block with his people, still moving like the same kid who came up in Parkway Gardens. That connection made fans love him even more. He felt real, untouchable, and loyal. But it also meant the same enemies that haunted him in the streets followed him into fame. Von wasn't just rapping about war, he was still living in it. This balance between rap stardom and gang life was what made Von so captivating. But it's also what made him a ticking time bomb. You can't play both sides forever without paying the price. And as Von's fame grew, so did the target on his back. The world was about to see how dangerous that combination could get.
I can't make this up. For some reason, Von wasn't himself. I'm not gonna lie. This is somebody who's more on point than security act. This is somebody I'm on the road with, I'm with him. Like, cause he know how to move, he know how to pick spots. Like, yo, this man is like, I promise you, the best artist I ever moved in my life. Cause normally, if we got an after party or we got anything we're going to, we know as a team. Everybody know to be on point. You know what I'm saying? We're traveling with a real deal gangster, a real stepper. So everybody gonna know how to move. But from that night, I don't know what it was. Maybe it's God timing. I don't know what it was, but Von completely went on his own course.
After linking up with Lil Durk and joining OTF, King Von finally had a platform to match his street legend, and he didn't waste a second. His debut single, Crazy Story, went viral. A raw, detailed track where Von rapped like he was narrating a movie straight out of O-Block. No cap, it sounded so real because it was. Fans gravitated toward his storytelling, and for the first time, drill music had a voice that could break outside of Chicago without watering anything down. Durk gave Von more than just a cosign. He gave him connections, shows, and real industry support. That's how Vaughn went from the block to doing interviews, performing in front of thousands, and charting songs. But while the rap world was embracing him, Vaughn was still dealing with legal drama. In 2019, both he and Lil Durk were arrested in Atlanta for a shooting outside a lounge. The charges were serious: attempted murder, armed robbery, and more. Prosecutors claimed Durk and Vaughn were caught on camera shooting at a man and stealing his chain. Vaughn stayed locked up for months, and people thought his career was done before it even started. But then he beat the odds again. He made bond, and instead of slowing down, he doubled up. The fact that he was still able to release music and move around while fighting such heavy charges only added to his mystique. Fans saw him as untouchable, the kind of rapper who could dodge bullets in real life and still come back rapping about it the next week. But as Vaughn's career picked up, so did the drama. By 2020, he wasn't just another drill rapper. He was a rising star on the national stage. And with fame came bigger enemies. The biggest one? NBA Youngboy. Vaughn's issues with Youngboy weren't random. The tension started when Vaughn was rumored to be messing with Jania, Youngboy's baby mama. Social media lit up with back and forth posts, and soon it wasn't just about women, it was about pride, image, and respect. Vaughn threw subliminals, Youngboy responded through music, and fans ate it up like fuel to the fire. What made it worse was Quando Rondo, Youngboy's artist, stepping into the mix. Quando stood 10 toes behind Youngboy, and suddenly Vaughn's beef wasn't just internet chatter. It became street-level tension. Every post, every lyric, every live stream felt like it was escalating towards something bigger. Vaughn, being who he was, didn't duck smoke. He clowned Youngboy publicly, saying his music was all cap. He didn't just rap about real-life street wars. He called out rappers he thought were faking it. And that move right there sealed the tension. Youngboy's camp felt disrespected, and once pride gets involved, it's only a matter of time before it gets physical. Still, Vaughn was living like he was untouchable. He dropped Welcome to a Block in October 2020, his biggest project yet. The album got love from critics and fans, and it looked like he was finally crossing over into mainstream success. Vaughn was giving interviews, buying jewelry, and moving like a star. But behind the shine, the beef with Youngboy's crew was boiling hot. Everyone could feel something was about to pop off. It was just a matter of when and where. And tragically, that moment came fast. Less than 2 weeks after his album dropped, King Von's life would be cut short in Atlanta, outside a hookah lounge, in a way that felt like the streets finally caught up to him. November 6, 2020, the night everything came crashing down. King Von had just dropped his album, Welcome to a Block, and the celebration energy was still in the air. He pulled up to Monaco Hookah Lounge in Atlanta with his crew, not knowing this would be his last night alive. The vibe was supposed to be light, just another night out. But in the streets, unfinished beef doesn't wait. Von arrived with a squad, including his manager and OTF affiliates. Reports say he wasn't even aware that Quando Rondo's camp was nearby at first. But once word spread and faces were spotted, that unspoken tension between Von and NBA Youngboy's side became real in the flesh. It wasn't about rap anymore. This was pride, disrespect, and months of subliminals boiling over. Surveillance footage shows the start of the chaos. Von, instead of hanging back, walked straight toward Quando Rondo and threw hands. No talking, no hesitation. Von's fists were flying, and it was clear he wanted to make a statement. But that decision, choosing to fight Quando right there in public, would set off a chain of events that ended in gunfire. As Von and Quando scuffled, shots rang out. According to the official story, it was Lil Tim, Quando's close friend, who pulled the trigger. He saw Von and his crew jumping his man and decided to protect him the only way he knew how, by firing his weapon. Multiple shots hit Von, and the scene instantly spiraled into panic. Cameras caught the chaos. People running, security scrambling, cars peeling off. Von's crew tried to carry him to safety, but he collapsed just steps away. The energy went from celebration to horror in seconds. Von, the kid who survived Chicago, beat murder charges, and dodged countless enemies, was now bleeding out on an Atlanta street. Quando Rondo himself was filmed cradling Von in the middle of the madness, trying to keep him conscious. That image confused fans. One moment they were enemies, the next he looked like he was trying to save him. But Lil Tim's shots had already done the damage. Von was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. The O'Block hero, barely 26 years old, was gone. News of his death spread like wildfire. Social media lit up instantly, with fans, rappers, and even rivals reacting in shock. For Chicago, it was deja vu, another young star taken too soon, just when his career was ready to take off. For OTF, it was personal. Lil Durk lost not just an artist on his label, but a brother, a soldier who had been by his side from the block to the charts. The aftermath was messy. Quando Rondo doubled down, saying his team only acted in self-defense. Lil Tim was arrested and charged with Von's murder, but he quickly made bond, adding fuel to the fire. Von's crew, meanwhile, made it clear they weren't letting it slide. Suddenly, the rap game wasn't just mourning Von's death, it was bracing for the fallout of a war between two camps with too much pride and too much to lose, and that's the craziest part. King Von had finally escaped Chicago's cycle of violence, only to meet his end in Atlanta, hundreds of miles from O'Block. It proved that no matter how far you go, the streets always follow if you don't leave them behind. Von couldn't outrun the life he came from, and in the end, it caught him right when he was about to win big. King Von's death didn't just hit Chicago, it shook the whole rap game. Within hours of the news breaking, fans were flooding social media with disbelief. Von had just dropped Welcome to O'Block, an album that was supposed to cement him as more than just a drill rapper. Instead, the project turned into his eulogy. Every bar he spit, every story he painted, felt heavier now that he was gone. For Lil Durk, the loss was crushing. Von wasn't just an artist under OTF, he was family. The two had been moving together like brothers, surviving cases, fighting charges, and riding the highs of fame. When Von died, Durk went dark on social media, and when he finally resurfaced, his pain was written all over his music. Songs like Backdoor and Still Trappin' felt like open wounds, with Durk mourning, but also making it clear that OTF wouldn't fold under the weight of losing one of their hardest soldiers. Meanwhile, the internet went crazy with conspiracies. Some fans said Von's death was part of a bigger industry setup, pointing to the eerie timing, right after his biggest release, right after the beef with NBA YoungBoy had peaked. Others speculated that Von's own lifestyle caught up to him, that you can't be half in, half out of the streets forever. Whatever theory you believed, one thing was clear. Von's story became more than just music. It became another cautionary tale in hip-hop. And then there was Lil Tim. His arrest for Von's murder made him one of the most hated figures online, but Quando Rondo stood by him. Quando went on live saying they acted out of self-defense, claiming Von's crew started it by attacking first. But the streets don't care about technicalities. All they saw was King Von, O'Block's pride, laying in a coffin. That made Quando and Lil Tim marked men in the eyes of Von's fans and OTF supporters. The beef didn't just stay in Atlanta. It spread across the map, with fans waiting to see if Durk and OTF would retaliate. Back in Chicago, Von's death left a massive void. He wasn't just a rapper, he was O'Block's voice, the one who carried the stories of his neighborhood to the mainstream. His funeral was packed, and murals started popping up in Chicago almost overnight. For the youth in O'Block, Von's rise had been proof that you could make it out, even if your past was messy. For them, his death was a reminder of how hard it really is to escape. But despite the tragedy, Von's music didn't fade. In fact, it grew even bigger. Songs like Crazy Story and Took Her to the O blew up all over again, this time carrying the weight of knowing the storyteller was gone. Fans treated his verses like prophecies. Every time Von rapped about death, it felt like he had predicted his own fate. That's part of why his legend only grew stronger after November 2020. The craziest part about King Von's story is the contradiction. On one hand, he was a rising star who could have been one of the biggest names in rap. On the other, he was still tied to a street life filled with violence, bodies, and enemies. That tension made him fascinating, but it also made his death almost feel inevitable. Von lived fast, and his music showed he knew exactly what came with it. Today, King Von stands as both a success story and a warning. He showed how raw talent and real stories could take you from O Block to global fame. But he also showed what happens when the streets never let go. For fans, that's what makes his legacy hit so hard. He was real to the end. And as long as drill music exists, King Von's name will always echo through it. His rise, his fall, and his legend will keep being retold, not just as rap history, but as a reminder of how dangerous it is when fame and the streets collide.